This is part 3 of my video about the International Protection Bill being rushed through the Oireachtas and into the Senate this week with very little debate and half of it not even written yet. In this video, I'm going to look at all the ways that this bill, written in its current format, is protecting the for-profit asylum industry. This bill, the way that it is written, locks in the commercial model that bleeds the Irish state of billions. The first thing it does not do is cap nightly rates. For every asylum seeker that the Irish state allows in, which current figures say is about 33,000 people, we pay a private hotel up to €92 per night. Last weekend, I got a luxury hotel in London in the middle of Soho for €92 for the night. What the refugee receives is a bunk bed in a room with 10 other people possibly. It is a great day to be a hotelier in the immigration housing business. Those rates have risen 68% since 2022. Nothing in this legislation addresses that or stops those rates from rising further. In fact, Sinn Féin proposed a cap at 70 a night, which is still a lot, and our fiscally minded government rejected it. That's weird. Why? Why reject a cap on how much we spend on private hotel rooms for immigrants? That feels bipartisan. Whether you want the immigrants here or not, you definitely don't want to be spending this much money on them, surely. The second thing that this bill fails to do is create a mandate for state-owned provisions. There is nothing in this bill that requires the state to build, own, or manage its own accommodation. What's grotesque about the comms approach is that they simultaneously announced a separate policy decision that said the government has an ambition to create at least 1,400 state-owned beds. That is not a legal obligation. That is one party's political promise. A future minister can simply drop that whole socialist idea and continue to allow the state to bleed money out to its cronies. Absolutely nothing in what Jim O'Callaghan refers to as a reset of our international protection system looks at procurement reform. Despite the Comptroller and Auditor General finding that over half the properties it inspected had no contract in place, and 161 out of 325 centres had no contract at all, this bill still does not require basic procurement safeguarding. This bill does not end the sole intermediary model, which is what's propping up the Brimwood monopoly. No need for a value for money review. No need to change the payment by capacity model, where these providers are being paid for the amount of beds in the hotel, not the amount of occupants in those beds. You're going to market this thing as the reform of the century, but ignore all of the existing problems with the existing model. Ireland did not need to introduce biometric surveillance for immigrants, where we now have to store in an expensive server everyone's fingerprints. Ireland needed to reflect on the fact that we have paid over €5 billion in less than 10 years to hotelier monopolies who charge the state based on the capacity of their property, not the amount of immigrants inside. The government's entire financial argument for this bill rests on one single claim. Faster processing means lower accommodation bills, right? Not if the hotel charges you anyway. No, faster processing means more mistakes and harm to immigrants and vulnerable people. Faster processing means less questions to these providers about the quality or the cost. This entire bill acts as if us accepting this incredibly high cost for overnight rates is non-negotiable, and the only way to reduce that cost for the state is to get rid of the immigrants quicker. And when processing targets are missed, as they have been for the last 30 years, the commercial contractors can bill us more. With this bill, the Irish government are cutting €170 million of IPAS funding without addressing or even mentioning these obvious leaks in the bucket. So now the people responsible for refugees and asylum seekers, the people who are on the frontline services, have less money, less time, less resource, and less institutional support behind them to help these people. That means the entire delivery of government service gets worse. The government tells you but we've saved loads of money. You start to blame frontline service providers and immigrants, and the people who are taking most of that budget remain largely unaffected, arguably commercially better off. Now, our morally bankrupt government has decided it is imperative that these asylum seekers pay rent. Pay rent for their shitty fucking bunk bed in the Holiday Inn. And it's not a fixed rent. It says asylum seekers who work will pay up to 40% of their wages. And the hotel operators still receive their full rate regardless. This bill creates a system where the most vulnerable, most traumatized, and most legally illiterate people in the whole society are being forced to subsidize the commercial profits of a slumlord. On the topic of morally bankrupt government, the family reunification restrictions, which were not asked for by the EU and were not part of the original bill, but were tacked on after the debates, mean that refugees are blocked from bringing their family over until or unless they can prove to the Irish state that they are financially self-sufficient. They cannot owe any money to iPass, and they must be of good character. Unclear what defines good character. That's political rhetoric, not legislative. This financial self-sufficiency test effectively bars most people from ever bringing their families, which I'm sure the racists are quite glad to hear. Because most people who come as asylum seekers can only get work in low-paid jobs. They usually work in care, in hospitality, and in food processing. On the current salaries of people who work in those industries, these refugees are banned from ever reuniting with their families. Like, are you okay? What the fuck is wrong with this government? This bill also introduces new offences that criminalise people who interact with the asylum system in ways the state disapproves of. This includes using false or substitute documents, even when fleeing war with no papers, refusing to hand over your phone passcode. This wording is dangerous and vague. It says it is a criminal offence to endanger your own safety during arrest, including behaviour linked to disability and trauma. The bill is also making it a criminal offence to fail to comply with directions to attend screening centres. This is giving USA 1990s war on drugs, we just want excuses to detain people. Defining new criminal offences should be done with the intention of protecting us all in this society, right? Please explain to me how a disabled or traumatised person in an asylum centre endangering their own safety needs to be classified as a criminal offence. It's ableist, it's harmful. It isn't just ignorant to trauma-informed behaviour, it actually looks like we know exactly what trauma-informed behaviour is and we're criminalising that because we want to lock you up. Detention industrial complex. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission has said that this effectively criminalises the process of seeking asylum at all. Neoliberal arrogance sits across all of this. We're going to make asylum cheaper without cutting the profits of the cronies we gave no-bid contracts to. They can keep all of their profits while the state socialises the risk, and the individual asylum seeker is the one who's made responsible. The Irish state will only oblige your dignity if you can find a way to earn yourself free of a predatory system designed around somebody else's profit margin. The entire cost-saving strategy relies on increasing the speed of frontline worker processing. God forbid you address the harm of having a for-profit asylum infrastructure.